Well, good morning, everybody. Let's call this meeting to order. It is the Monroe County Local Income Tax Council's Public Safety Income Tax Committee, Tuesday, August 4th, 2020, at a wonderful 8:01 a.m. Let me just say that the agenda includes presentation and discussion of the County Council's recommendation for funding qualified service providers. And as part of this, we will hear estimates of the public safety rates and revenues from staff. And we will then hear the public safety answering point budget proposal from Amy Hensley. And we will follow that with specific discussions about the review of applications from the qualified service providers. And finally, we'll get on to the business of deciding how we wish to divvy up the revenue that is estimated to come to public safety lit funding. And before we leave, we have to decide on minutes and any other business. So let's begin formally with the roll call. Mr. Lucas?
Sure. Committee member Scambolori?
Here.
Smith?
I am here.
McKim?
Here.
Oldham?
Here.
Munson?
Here.
Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Sims?
Here.
And Purcell? I'm not sure if she's got...
Lois P is below us. Her mic is not on, but that might be Lois Purcell.
Yes.
Good. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. And let's just jump right in, because if we can wrap up our business today, that will be our only meeting on this subject. If not, we will meet again Thursday, same time, new Zoom link. You're shaking your head at me, Stephen.
Not the same time. It'll be Thursday at 6:30.
Oh, that's good to know. I put it in my calendar wrong. So Thursday at 6:30. Thank you. So let's begin with Mr. Lucas's overview and what he's going to be calling on people to talk about.
Sure, thank you. The committee is aware that this year we don't have the typical revenue estimates that the state provides, and Jeff Underwood is here and may be able to add a bit more. But typically the state right around August 1st provides, they're called estimates, but they're typically pretty accurate estimates of what revenues will be available to for public safety local income tax. And this year, due to extensions granted by executive orders for certain tax filing deadlines, that delayed the state's ability to provide those revenue estimates. And Jeff may be able to comment on what's an appropriate placeholder. I know the county in their deliberations used 90% of last year's revenues. And Jeff, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Just to comment that yes, that's their recommendation at this time, and obviously it'll be fairly late, well into October, when most of us will have our budgets completed, and they're telling us, at least for lit and public safety lit, to use 90%.
So I would like to comment that I understand the 90% to be a conservative estimate, and there's likely to be a greater amount of funding, but we will calculate tax rates and percent of revenue based on the estimate that we have to work with. and then any additional funding would be automatically sent to the recipient based on the tax rate or percent of revenue. So, Mr. Underwood, any comment on that?
No, it's just unfortunate. We're in unprecedented times, and it's putting a lot of burden on all of us that are trying to put budgets together and estimates of what
Right.
expenditures. Obviously, costs continue to go up, and so you know, we're all kind of operating in the dark this year, and I'm hopeful that you know, we'll be closer to 100% on the numbers rather than the 90%. But I think going conservative is the best approach at this point in time.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Mr. McKim just sent a note in the chat if you'd like to take a look at that. That's the official estimate, the 90%.
Okay, I have to bring up that chat on my. I got it now.
May I ask
So
a question?
Mr. McKim sent a link so everybody could read about the 90% number as estimate. Okay, thank you, Jeff and Jeff. Mr. Sims?
Thank you. Good morning. Without having to click into the link, do we actually have that number, the 90% number handy? I mean, can someone just read that off so I could write it down?
Yes, we do. It is, and you'll correct me if this is wrong, $7,789,211.
Thank you. I'll check the link a little later, but I thought this would save time. So
Right.
Thank you.
And I've been thinking of this as roughly 7.9 million. Okay. Mr. Lucas, are there any others? Oh, excuse me, I just saw you, Ms. Piedmont Smith.
It would be roughly 7.8 million, not 7.9 million.
Yes, you're right. Sorry. The font is so small on my screen, I could not read it. Let me correct that number, please. 7,789,211. So, Mr. Lucas, is there any other presentation before we move on to the next point?
I don't believe so. Given that revenue estimate, the committee, I believe most of the committee members are aware that the first amount that comes out of that available funding is set aside for the public safety answering point. Amy Hensley is here to discuss the 2021 dispatch budget. And if she's ready to present, I will let her take it away.
Right. Welcome, Ms. Hensley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this year, what we're looking at from the public safety lit is a total of $2,247,489.57. In our budget for next year, we put in for an additional 3.5 FTEs. The Novak report had recommended 9.5, and we thought we would space that over a 3-year period. I had greatly reduced the overtime because I'm anticipating it to go way down with the added staffing. Currently, our staffing is we have 26.5 dispatcher positions, and currently we have 1.5 of those open. Beyond that, the supplies and things pretty much stayed the same. I lowered the capital projects line because I inherited some major projects that were still in progress. So instead of taking on new projects, we're going to focus on completing the ones that are in midstream. there any questions on it, or do you want any additional information? I know
Yes.
that was kind of short and sweet.
That was short and sweet, but everybody received an Excel spreadsheet of your budget and your comparison to 2020. So,
Correct.
Mr. McKim has a question or comment?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Could you say the numbers again in terms of the current and proposed staffing level, number of FTEs?
Our current FTEs for dispatchers, and I'm not counting supervisors and management, but for dispatchers is 26 and a half. And we're proposing to add 3.5.
Okay. So then you'll have 30 FTEs as dispatchers at the end of the budget if this passes. And how many did you say you currently have vacant?
We currently have vacant 2.5 slots.
So that seems really good. It seems like traditionally there have been a lot more vacancies.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Well, we're trying hard to hang on to them. We went to a combination shift instead of straight 8s because a lot of families work better with a 12-hour shift. And yet some of our members and their family needs support the 8-hour shift. So we went to a combo shift where some of our dispatchers are on 8 hours and some are on 12s. And by trying to make it more focused on meeting some of their needs, I think is what has lowered some of our exodus.
Well, that's great. And I also like the idea of reducing overtime because that also reduces burnout. So
Yes.
that's good to hear. Thanks.
We do have a few that really like that overtime.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Gambaluri?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Amy. Just to confirm I'm understanding this correctly, it looks like the decrease in the request is due mostly to the overtime and also to the communications contract. Is that correct? I'm seeing a $45,000 decrease.
Yes.
Okay, could you say more about the communications contract, please?
Let me pull up my other spreadsheet. Okay, in the communications contracts, those are all the software and hardware maintenance agreements and things that we have on an annual basis.
Huh.
And did you change vendors or?
For the decrease?
Yes.
Part of what was built into it for 2020 was to one of our open projects, in case there were any anticipated costs with that. And so I've been paying out of that some anticipated costs that with that open project, it has changed. Well, the numbers have changed. For example, one of the open projects is getting our protocols online. And part of the cost of the protocols had to do with the number of people we were training. And we bought a training package as part of the contract. But because we've increased staffing over what it has been, because there've been so many vacancies, they bought a smaller training package. So with the increasing our staffing, we had to buy a larger training package. We outfitted the training room with computers and furniture, which last year, the new computers, the training computers, we had to buy additional software licenses. So not knowing what those expenses were, those had been built in to the 2020 budget. But once those purchases are done, I shouldn't have a lot of that for next year. So I didn't build in as big a cushion for unanticipated things.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your explaining.
I didn't know how much in the weeds you wanted me to get there.
You got just far enough.
Good. So Mr. McKim has a comment or question.
Yes, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but do you know if how long the state is essentially going to guarantee the level of E911 funds, or if you know anything about, have any thoughts on the future of that revenue stream?
What we have been told, because it's based on cell phones, which people are obsessive compulsive about their cell phones. So they are not expecting that revenue stream to be affected by the COVID and everything we're experiencing around the state.
Okay, and basically cell phones presumably or increased cell phone use is making up for the decrease in landlines.
Yes.
So
yes.
presumably that's sort of a zero sum. All right, good.
And they have been looking at ways for additional revenue streams at the state. I don't know where they stand with some of that, but some of the counties have not really advanced a lot in their training or their standards of service, and because of being poorer counties, more rural counties. So what they're trying to do is take on more responsibility at the state level by increasing funding and making available more resources that the state is willing to pay for so that the people can tap into them. A few years ago, they took over some of the training responsibility, and there are certain trainings that they have identified. And if you're taking those trainings, instead of having to pay it out of your budget, you can submit your invoices to the state and they will pay them. And that has helped small centers especially be able to tap into training that they otherwise couldn't afford. And so the state is looking at more things they can take on and more revenue that they can tap into to pay for that. And that would be helpful even to us.
Thank you. Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, so are there any training opportunities that we can take advantage of that would be paid for by the state?
We are, and we plan to do it this fall.
Excellent.
Other questions or comments? So back to you, Mr. Lucas, to answer my question. And that is, I think the next business item is a motion. And is that correct in your view? A motion regarding the PSEP budget proposal.
If the committee is ready to, it certainly could. I think last year in reviewing the minutes and records, the committee waited to approve, I think, all the figures until the end of its deliberations. So it's up to the committee. If the committee's ready to approve the dispatch budget, a motion in that regard would certainly be appropriate.
Okay. Committee members, are you ready?
Why don't we just wait to the end? Just
all right.
Consider all the numbers together.
So that's good.
I was about to make a motion, but that's fine.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm okay voting. I just
make a motion.
It's all interconnected though, and I believe the committee does have a spreadsheet, worksheet showing past PS Lit distributions back till 2017 with that 90% revenue estimate, and then numbers plugged in for both PSAP and the county council's recommendations for qualified service providers. And we can display that when it's appropriate.
Well, I'm because PSAP should be our priority. I move that we accept the proposed PSAP budget as presented by Ms. Hensley.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the motion? Seeing none. Do we put this out for public comment, Mr. Lucas?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, public. please identify yourself in the chat if you have a question or comment.
And if any member of the public wants to make a comment, you can use the chat. You can also use the raise hand function to let us know you'd like to comment.
Well,
I'm not seeing
while we're
anything in the chat yet.
I was just going to suggest displaying the budget just so everybody sees exactly what we're voting on at the same time.
Good thought.
Amy, I don't know if you've got a spreadsheet.
I've
You
got
sent
it.
it out. Yeah, I was to say you
I've
sent
got
it
it.
out, Mr. Lucas.
No, I did. Yeah, I just didn't know if she had the spreadsheet
Okay.
pulled up. I've got it as well if folks.
Do you want to open it and share your screen, Mr. Lucas?
Sure, give me just a second.
I've been looking at it while we have been having the meeting, and so I didn't notice its absence. So thank you, Mr. McKim, for saying please show this.
So the cell highlighted, I believe, is the total amount proposed to come from the public safety lit.
Yes.
Agreed.
Questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay. So I would like to suggest that we look at another spreadsheet, and that is the table of recommendations that does include both the 90% revenue estimate and the request from dispatch.
Would you like me to pull that up?
Yeah, could you do that so
Sure.
people can see the numbers in relation to each other?
So this worksheet here should display the revenue estimates suggested by the DLGF. This is the number committee member Munson read off earlier in the meeting. The proposed dispatch budget is reflected here. This worksheet includes the figure recommended by the county council for allocation to the qualified service providers. We haven't yet discussed that, but that figure is reflected here. And the remaining funding would be distributed to the 4 municipalities in the county. These percentages here, I've taken the liberty of dropping those in as placeholders. We don't quite yet know what these percentages will be. These are amounts provided by the state as well. But based on past years, this seemed a good placeholder figure. So folks can see the amount that would flow to the county, Bloomington, Ellettsville, and Steinsville.
Okay, thank you for adding those. And is that based on numbers that you've received recently from the state, Mr. Lucas?
Those are my own placeholders. I just look back at the past 4 years to see what they've hovered around, and I've dropped in as estimates. So
okay,
provided by the state.
Okay, thank you. Very good. So we have a motion on the floor.
A question, please.
Thank you. Did you call the question or you have a question?
I have a question.
Please, Mr. Sims.
Those on the sheet that Mr. Lucas just showed, It showed the qualified service provider estimates, or the 4.5%, and then you move down to the certified shares. My question is, Steve, Mr. Lucas, on your estimates at the bottom of the certified shares, has the qualified service provider estimates or recommendation been subtracted from that? So,
Yes.
okay, so that's okay. And it would be a percentage, each of those at the bottom would be 4.5% higher without the QSP figure. Approximately.
That's what it would look like with that.
Approximately.
That
yeah.
doesn't quite, yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
not exact, but just so I could wrap my head around it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I can simply remove this cell and.
Oh, no, you
And
can leave it up.
It automatically recalculates.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, let us move to a roll call vote on the motion. Mr. Lucas?
Call the roll if you'd like. I'll start with Committee Member Smith.
Yes.
McKim.
Yes.
Oldham.
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
And Scambolari.
Yes.
And I know Ms. Purcell's here, but doesn't get a vote on the committee. So that passes, I believe, 7-0.
So thank you. Then we will just move right along our agenda to consideration of the amounts to be distributed to qualifying service providers, the QSPs. This is under a specific statute, which is referenced in our agenda. So this is the end result of the county council's evaluation and then decision. And we have another worksheet that gives more information about the applications. So you would bring that up. Good.
Can everyone see that?
Thank you. So a bit of review about the process for the public. This committee of the Local Income Tax Council was decided to have the county council review the applications from qualified fire department providers here, and then bring our recommendations back to this committee. As a particular point of this process, we asked this year to look only at the most urgent needs and to make sure that we had applications that listed the priorities for funding so we could look at specific projects and talk about specific needs. Okay, the county council then appointed a subcommittee to do the actual review of the applications and to develop recommendations for our full body. And what you see in front of you is the end result of this multi-phase work here. The providers are listed in yellow on the left, including the intended use of funding and the various government units served. We added to this an estimated population for these units because we have some very small ones and we have one very big one. And I thought that was important information for us. Next is the breakdown from each of the 4 applications. as to the distribution of funding that they are seeking. Everybody has a request for capital outlays, and Bean Blossom Township has an additional request for personal services. So in column H, you can see the priorities and their actual funding requests to us. And I think, should these be read off, Mr. Lucas? Is that important? Or do you want to just reference the table?
I don't think it would hurt.
Okay.
I think it's fine to read those off in the amount recommended.
Okay. So, Mr. McKim, would you like to read for a while?
Sure.
Yes.
So
I should say who the members of our illustrious subcommittee was to develop our review and recommendations to the council. And it was Councilor McKim, Council President Eric Spoonmore, and myself.
So we have 4 fire departments. Monroe Fire Protection District, we're recommending the fire station remodel and 1 repeater for a total of $215,000. I'm sorry, $170,000, sorry,
Yes.
out of a request of $215,000. The Ellettsville Fire Department, we're recommending 1 mobile repeater for a total of $20,000 out of a total request of $20,000. For Bean Blossom Township Steinsville Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., we're recommending for an exhaust system for the fire station and 2 mobile repeaters for a total of $83,700 out of a total request of $173,695. And finally, for the Benton Township and Monroe County Volunteer Fire Department, we're recommending for an exhaust system for the fire station an award of $80,000 out of a total request of $333,856.
So thank you very much.
Total request of 353, total award of $353,700.
Okay, well, before I open this up for questions and comments, I would note that the amount requested by the county council's vote is approximately 45.4%. And I can't see that on your screen, Mr. Lucas, but maybe I have it. Nope. I do not have it as a percentage.
The total, yeah, so that would be
the total percentage.
Whoops.
Calculating on the fly. I thought I had
4.54%.
4.54.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult for our committee to identify which projects we needed to fund and what would be a reasonable cost, considering that the requests are so much greater than anything we've voted on to fund before. The total requests were $742,551. And so we are funding certainly less than half of that. And we're funding a percentage of the estimated incoming revenue that is about 4.5%. We chose this number because it was compatible with previous years and with what we thought was a fair proportion for the population that is being served by these service providers. So I think we're ready to open this up for questions and comments. Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much to my county council colleagues for all the work that went into this. Can you explain to me why it wouldn't make more sense for this money to come out of the county's distributed shares, since this is for people who live outside the city limits?
Yes, well, the county's distributed shares are used for public safety needs that are both outside the city limits and inside the city limits. Funding in the past from our public safety lit line has gone to the jail, certainly the sheriff, the prosecutor, the courts, community corrections, and public defender, I believe. Mr. McKim, is that a good list?
I don't remember the public defender being in there, but yeah, and it's important to note that the prosecutor, the prosecutor expenses are things like sex crimes deputy prosecutor and domestic violence prosecutor that very much benefit people throughout the county. So yeah, I think that's very important to note, that the majority of the county's use of the public safety lit is for expenses that serve people throughout the county, regardless of whether they're in a municipality.
I understand that, but still, residents of the city of Bloomington pay for the government of Monroe County, as well as for the government of the city of Bloomington, but they get their fire and emergency services through the city of Bloomington. So I don't really understand why they should pay for the fire protection services that they do not benefit from.
But that's kind of, we don't have a system where people in the city are paying income taxes to the city and people who live outside the city are paying income taxes to outside the city. That's simply not the way our system works. We are a system that pools all of the income taxes collected, regardless of whether you live in the city or not, and then distributes it based on kind of an arbitrary formula. And so it's really up to us to try to allocate those funds fairly in a way that serves everybody. But we don't have a system where, like I said, if you happen to live in the city, then your income taxes go to the city. We do that way, we have a system that's more like that for property taxes, but we simply don't for income taxes. We might someday.
So how do the income taxes come back to the city government? Through the same kind of distributed shares formula that we see here?
It's not the same formula, I believe.
Wait, I'm sorry, what was the question?
How do income tax dollars come to the city government?
You're talking about regular income taxes, not the public safety. It's a formula that's very similar to this formula, but based primarily on property taxes plus past income taxes.
So it is proportionate to population / property.
Property, not population.
Property.
So I believe Mr. Oldham had a question.
Actually, more of a comment, if I can. And Jeff, please forgive me. This seems like a swipe at you, and it's not. It's just the wording you used a second ago. I do renew, as in years past, my objection to the distribution amounts, I guess. And don't get me wrong, I do appreciate the county council going through this. But yet again, this year, we have one of the qualified service providers obtaining more than the municipalities are taking, at least two of the municipalities. And again, the share has already been, as Jeff said, there's already a method under the law of the division of this PS lit tax that is representative of how things should be distributed. But yet again, we have a qualified service provider who is in the midst of resetting their own tax base, seemingly going to take away more than two of the municipalities of their guaranteed shares under the law. And I would again ask the same thing that Ms. Piedmont Smith said. If this is such a significant issue, that quite frankly, if we don't fund any of the qualified service providers, and then each of the municipalities wants to undertake, and forgive me, the county as well, wants to undertake a sub-grant out of their own funds for that, I'm fine with that. But to again, do this split again, where once again, we have a qualified service provider walking away with substantial amount of the money that is being devoted to those QSPs, just seems like a smack in the face to some of the other county residents.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Gambaluri?
Thank you. This is actually kind of both. I did just some quick sketching out of the total request divided by population, and came up with the following really quick numbers. For the Monroe Fire Protection District, their request amounts to about $5.64 per person. In the Ellettsville Fire Department request about $2 per person. Bean Blossom about $51 per person, and they ask for some more substantial things. The request out of Benton Township comes in at $106 per person. If I'm calculating that incorrectly or thinking wrong, let me know. I'm generally in favor of things like exhaust systems that preserve the health of firefighters. But in particular, I had questions about the Benton, and I read the packet, but could one of you say more about the Benton Township remodel, the renovation of Station 14 for $195,000? That's a pretty grown-up ask. And could some of you, just for my benefit, fill me in on the background of that?
Do you want me to take a stab?
Yeah, and it's in one of they have a narrative in one of the
In their application.
documents sent out to the committee under QSP applications. But yeah, Cheryl, go ahead.
I think basically what Benton is needing to do is to prepare for joining the Fire Protection District next year and reconfiguring their fire station. I don't recall when it was built and when additions were made to it, but it was some time ago. And so that they can have 24/7 personnel there. And the remodel of the fire station in Indian Creek was exactly for the same purpose.
Notice that for Benton, we did not recommend
No, we didn't.
that request be funded.
Questions or comments?
I have one.
Mr. Smith?
I'd like to follow up, and perhaps I can ask Mr. McKim, will you expound a little bit more? You're saying we don't have a system to take revenue in proportionate ways. Will you say a little bit more about your comment?
What I was trying to say is that we do not have a system of taxation where city residents pay income taxes that then stay within the city, and people who are outside of the city pay income taxes that stay outside of the city. Instead, we have a system in which all of the income taxes collected countywide are pooled and then distributed according to formulas that honestly have just kind of grown up historically. They're not even necessary. I don't know that there's a huge amount of justification for it at this point. They've just grown up historically, and the formulas themselves don't change over time. So that we already have a system where all the revenue is pooled and we have to kind of decide together, or at least we're encouraged to decide together how those revenues are spent. So far, the General Assembly has decided that the fire department in the city is part of the city services that gets funded, but the rural fire departments are not part of the formula for which public safety gets decided. It's kind of an arbitrary decision. A bill to change that has come up a number of times.
Yep.
It may or may not come up in the future and may not, but it's just kind of an arbitrary decision on the part of the General Assembly.
So I'm going to follow up on that with, so does that mean that all the government entities outside of the city, can they change their revenue streams so that they can pay for those asks that are important for their fire departments? And I don't mean just ask Jeff, but anybody can answer that. But
Okay.
That's where my mind was going with how to proportionately do this, and it sounds like some of it is the way we have done it is historical, as Jeff said, and its vestiges from that's been around for a while. And I didn't know if there was a way to make it structurally better for the future.
Mr. Underwood?
Yeah, just to give the committee and some of you are new, just a little bit of background. There used to be a number of different income taxes. Those were consolidated into local income tax by the state legislature. And then they created 3 buckets: distributive shares, economic development, and public safety. The distributive shares has a much wider group of entities that are eligible for that. And as Mr. McKim said, there's a formula that's, it's kind of convoluted on how it allocates those out to those various units of government, including townships and the library. And I believe that MCCSC does not get, the school systems don't get any lit. In economic development and public safety, it's limited to the 4 municipalities, units of government: city, Ellisville, Steinsville, and Monroe County. And they have a different distributed share of that. Part of the public safety was that it was mainly created to fund unified dispatch centers, PSAPs. And any dollars, as the statute says, comes out of that first, and then the rest automatically falls to the other 4 units based on that distribution. They allow the ability to take applications from and fund qualified service providers, all of us. And traditionally, we've not seen requests come from the city for police or fire or the county, but we have seen those come through from the townships. The townships are responsible for providing fire protection. There are a couple of statutes that allow them to consolidate. I think after 2022, essentially Monroe County will be consolidated, except for, you'll have Ellisville, Bloomington, the Monroe County Fire District, and Bean Blossom. I don't believe they've been included yet. Benton is getting ready to vote on that, and I'm pretty certain that that's going to pass. So all of the townships will, Monroe or Bloomington and Washington disbanded so that they could join Monroe. So they've got to go geographically. So it'll be Bloomington, then Washington Township, and then Benton. So you'll basically have four providers, fire service. You'll have Ellisville, Bloomington, Bean Blossom, and the consolidated. So that's just sorry to jump in, but just want to give you some quick history on that, and how the lit is one tax, but it has three buckets that currently Monroe County and the city, Bloomington, Ellisville, and Steinsville have elected to enact 2 of those: public service and certified shares.
Right.
Thank you.
So, Mr. McKim, I wanted to make a point to Mr. Underwood, and then I'll call on you, please.
Sure.
I think one of the things that you should note on the historical table, could you put that up, Mr. Lucas? Okay, so Mr. Underwood gave a good summary of how the taxes are distributed, but I want you to note that the public safety lit tax is collected from people residing outside municipal limits. And they are governed primarily by townships. And you can see at the bottom of this table that townships do not get public safety certified shares. They do get income tax, which is good because people are paying it, but they're also paying for public safety income tax, and they are not allocated any. And that is because the public safety aspect of rural government, township government, is through the townships, and they are provided for in the statute with the funding that is allowed and not required, but allowed for qualified service providers. So to me, funding for a portion of our county population that lives outside municipalities is a fair thing. I didn't say the amounts, I'm just saying funding for them, I believe is fair since they're paying into it. Mr. McKim?
I just want to point out one other thing, that 4.5% approximately is, as you can see from the spreadsheet showing right here, is a number that has generally been used successfully in the past. It was not used in one year when essentially the dispatch center decided to do a big communications project that would benefit all the fire departments. And so nothing was allocated directly to the fire departments. But so that number has generally been, has generally worked out. And remember that this year it was calculated on the lower estimate, on that 90% estimate. So it's a lower number overall than in the past. And if the actual revenue comes in higher than 90%, which I think we all agree it most certainly will, could even be greater than 100%, then that 4.5, then all that additional revenue that comes in above that 90% would then be allocated to the county, the city, Ellettsville, and Steinsville. So that we would be voting on a specific award to the fire departments, not a percentage. See what I mean? So if the revenue comes in higher, then that additional revenue doesn't go to the fire departments. It just goes to the city and the county and the towns.
Right.
So I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
And for that reason, the subcommittee reviewed the applications with respect to specific projects rather than just an amount of funding. And that was taking our direction from this committee that we focus on urgent needs. Other questions or comments?
I don't know if you can see my hand, so.
I could not, I'm sorry, you had disappeared. Ms. Piedmont Smith and then Mr. Sims.
Yes, I wanted to say that what Mr. McKim just said is as far as if the total revenues are more than 90%, we can just consider that. We're just giving that part to the QSPs. Did I misinterpret that? Because that's not the way I see it at all.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
opposite.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what I said.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you say it again then? Because I didn't understand, obviously.
I say if the revenues come in higher than 90%,
Mm-hmm.
then it doesn't go to the QSPs at all. I'm saying it then that's essentially extra money that comes in just for the 4 municipalities.
Okay, yeah, but in either case, thank you for clarifying that. But if you look at that chart, if you look at the city's portion, which is my job to look at, so at 90%, we're getting what, 2.6 million. Last year we got 3 million. So we're taking a considerable cut And I know it may be more because 90% is quite conservative. And I know that the county and the other units are also taking a cut, but looking at that, that impacts our ability to meet our public safety commitments to Bloomington residents. So I'm quite concerned about that.
How does it come out if you go to 100%?
I don't know. Yeah, then we have a small increase.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we've been instructed to look at 90%, just in case.
Can I ask a quick question on the same line of thought here?
Yes, but Mr. Sims is
I apologize,
before
Jim.
you. That's okay. Miss Piedmont Smith, are you done for now?
For now, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Sims.
I'll defer to Mr. Odom as long as I can come immediately after.
Right.
And again, I apologize, Jim. I didn't remember you were going. On that
That's
same
okay.
chart, if we can use the 90% figure, but then zero out the 4.5%, what does that look like money-wise for everybody?
Sorry, give me a minute. Clicking too many buttons. So I don't know if everybody can see the change there. This is with the recommended amount for the QSPs, and then this is without.
Mhm.
Again, assuming the 90% revenue estimate from the state.
And again, it jumped about 200,000 if I remember correctly for the county's portion of that.
Just a little under 100. And again, these, I will remind folks, these percentages are not official. These were just my own placeholder percentages based on past years. This may change the amount.
So basically, if we would zero these out from looking at what I'm seeing, zero out this 4.5%, and again, there's requests on the table from QSPs for dollar figures. If the town of Ellisville absorbed Richland Beanblock or Richland Township's request of $20,000, we could essentially cover it by zeroing out the 4.5%. If the county absorbed the 2 fire departments that are making requests under this, they could essentially grant that money as well by zeroing this out and not be out any money at all. And it puts the money back in the municipality's hands to then do sub-grants if we need to our townships that we're responsible for. And by municipalities, I'm including the county as well.
Right. So I will question right away, well, so you can answer, why would the municipalities give funding to townships for public safety?
Well, first off, the municipalities would give that because the request, the sheet you're showing is actually a little bit of a misnomer or disingenuous, not intentionally. It is not the town of Ellisville making this request for $20,000. It is Richland Township who is served.
Yes.
But right.
Exactly.
Right. So we understand that. Traditionally as well, this council has only funded immediate urgent safety needs for the QSPs, but yet now we're going to fund or potentially fund a renovation to a firehouse so they are up to scale to join another fire protection district. I'm sorry, I don't see that as an urgent safety need. That's not an urgent safety need, and that's not something we've done before. But if we zero this out and then the individuals, the governmental bodies decide that they want to make subawards, if we zero it out, none of the governmental bodies are hurt by making those same subawards, and it's almost like a direct line. Essentially, Ellisville's would rise by the $20,000 or close to it that Richland Township is making the request for. The counties would rise by over $200,000 that the QSPs are asking for. So it doesn't hurt anywhere there to zero this money out. And then if you want to make those grant donations, or however you want to say it, those funding priorities for yourselves, that's fine. It doesn't hurt the bottom line, but the area that's responsible for the QSP, I guess, would then make the subaward and would come out the same for them, but it wouldn't impact the entire county, city, town, et cetera,
Right.
disproportionate.
Thank you. Mr. Sims, you wanted to comment?
Thank you. Yes. First of all, I want to thank my county council colleagues, their subcommittee, I guess, for doing what this committee asked as far as applications and doing that work. So I appreciate it and I thank you. My comment is the purpose of this PS Lit is to obviously fund dispatch. That's the main thing. And then the money that's left over after that from the pool is distributed to the 4 governmental units. Now, my question, or I guess, and someone can answer this question. I do have a question here somewhere. Those certified shares distribution is based on population. Isn't the township residents calculated as part of that overall population? And thus that original distribution?
No.
Nothing's based on population. There's none of these tax distributions are based on population.
So what is it based on, if I may ask? Is it people that are paying into it?
Property tax.
Property tax.
Okay.
Yeah, property tax footprint.
Thank you. And obviously the city has more of that share, and it's been distributed or recommended to distribute accordingly between those units. Is that now correct? Okay. Now, as far as township's requests, this is my 3rd year. Tagging along with what Mr. Oldham said, in particular with safety needs. My first year, it was the communication upgrades, which I think we all agreed it was necessary, getting on the same frequencies, upgrading equipment so that we could all communicate across countywide. I believe that we should follow what this is intended to do, or not so much intended, the way it is dispatch and then the 4 units. There was that need, and I, although I believe what I just said, how it should be distributed, there was this need countywide that I think was worth discussing. On the next phase had to do with self-contained breathing apparatus. For some reason, a large number of them were due to expire about the same time and fairly quickly. And I think through the understanding from a safety standpoint and that compassion, even though I didn't support the distribution, I did support that particular need for the safety of our township officers to not expose themselves unnecessarily by not having proper breathing apparatus. Now, moving forward to this one this year, like Mr. Oldham said, I see some needs. I don't know if I see critical or urgent safety needs. And I guess along those lines, we in the city have, and there's no application for the city, but we do know as part of our budgeting process, there are public safety needs that we, I think as a city elected representatives must consider. And as Councilmember Smith said, there's consideration for other revenue streams, possibility for townships, and maybe not right now, but I can see that. So I'm in support of obviously approving dispatch, which we've, or PSAP, which we've done. And then I'm okay and would support just following the distribution with the 4 units, government units as it's set up. So I guess that's my comment. And thank you for clarifying my thoughts, Mr. McKim.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Gambaluri?
Thank you. And thank you.
And then Ms. Piedmont Smith, sorry.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience with my questions. I'm glad I have my veteran council members to learn from on this. just for my benefit, what consideration has been given, and I'm going to take Ron's question and put a finer point on it. What consideration has been given to raising taxes in Benton Township or in the township?
Oh,
Townships don't have that option.
they do not.
Or is there another taxing entity that has been considered, that you've considered using to fund Benton Township or Bean Blossom or what have you?
Is there not a reset for the levy when people join the fire protection district?
I believe in the
They
fire
are.
protection district, there are more
Yes.
options, yes.
Yes.
But there's also a limitation as well.
But you're right, that the joining consolidation is the primary way for township fire departments to increase their revenue. And I thought, you know, and based on past discussions, this is my first year on the committee, but I had thought that there was some desire to kind of encourage the consolidation of fire departments, and even I think there was even maybe floated a consideration of a policy that all distributions would only go to departments that are in the process of consolidating. So maybe I misunderstood that, but I think we do want to encourage consolidation overall.
Mm-hmm.
And that I understand that. But do I understand too that the count, even if the townships can't raise taxes, the county has that option and the fire districts do as well?
The county does not have that option.
No, the county does.
Thank you.
So I would add a further point for Ms. Gambalori before Ms. Piedmont Smith speaks, and that is that just like city government and county government, townships, which provide funding for some of these service providers, not the fire protection district, but the others, are limited in what they can increase. And 2021, I think, is a particularly worrisome year because of the uncertainties about all revenue income coming in. So they will have very conservative budgets, and I doubt they can find additional funding. If they could, they would have already gone ahead with the projects, because the mobile repeaters are something they thought would come about as a result of the communications project. And as that turned out, equipment and programming cost more than expected. And so there was not funding except for a very few mobile repeaters. And as I understand it, this will go on, but it's not enough mobile repeaters to provide communication. So, Mr. McKim, go ahead, please, and then Mr. Underwood.
I thought I was next.
Oh, I have everybody's hands up. Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on Ms. Gambaleri's question. So we do have a request here from the Monroe Fire Protection District. And I understand they could raise their rates, their own tax rates. Did I understand that correctly?
They can raise them, but they are limited to how much they can raise them. Same for city government, same for county government.
Right, but they're not at their maximum levy as far as we know.
The point is, as they add units of government, as they add additional townships, they get to reset their rate at that time.
Right.
Otherwise, they're limited to the same growth quotient that every unit of government is allowed based on property taxes. The other thing, and just jumping in real quick, is townships also have the ability to have a fire cumulative capital development fund in addition to their other property tax rate to fund the ongoing operations. They can elect to have a cum cap development fund specifically for fire protection as well. So they have two financing, property taxes and cum cap development, which is also a property tax. They do have those. But we have encouraged consolidation because one of the themes that have been told us by that group is by consolidating, we can become more efficient, we have better buying power, and that should drive their costs down rather than up, and that they'll be more efficient than having numerous smaller units provide that. So we're certainly hopeful. As a Benton Township resident, I'm certainly hoping that my rate will go down because it should be less expensive to have a consolidated rather than a volunteer fire department. So I'll jump off now. Thank you.
So thank you. That helped answer the first part of my question. The second part of my question is about Beam Blossom and that they apparently do not plan to consolidate. So why is
Yes,
that?
they do.
They do?
Thank you, Ms. Purcell.
So what? When would that happen? When is that slated to happen?
I'm not sure. I know that they do talk about it at the meetings, and because of COVID, they haven't had a few, but they had one last night. And that was part of the topic of the need to move forward and join the district.
Well, that's really good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I can give a partial answer to Ms. Piedmont Smith. Beam Blossom Township has to wait until an adjacent township has become part of the district, and then they can go through that process. So the township they're waiting on is Washington Township.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we had Mr. McKim, and I guess Mr. Smith is next.
I just want to say to my city colleagues here, I fully understand your skepticism here at supporting the rural fire districts. This is why I don't like the structure of the tax, and I will continue to advocate at the state house level for tax reform. I have before. I've been doing it for years, and I will continue to do it. I agree. You are being put in a position of potentially voting on expenditures or voting on revenue to be diverted to people that by definition you don't represent. I understand why you don't want to do that. So I'm not holding you responsible for what I think is a badly structured tax. So I'm just saying that this will redouble my efforts to work with the General Assembly to reform local income taxes in Indiana. But I do not at all blame you for wanting to make sure that you take care of your own constituents first. That's the way it should be, really.
So, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Ms. Munson. I want to say that Mr. Oldham's comments, I thought that made a lot of sense that we zero out the QSPs and it goes to the municipalities. That seems to give the money to the folks who should be administering it closer to who needs it. So having said that, the question I really wanted to ask was if something like that, if we would do something like that, does that encourage consolidation? Do we think that has any influence on encouraging consolidation, which appears to be what is recommended? And I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody have any thoughts?
I doubt it. I think everyone talking about consolidation is already talking about consolidation.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you've seen about as much as you're going to see when the last two wind up joining.
Yep.
Benton's having their first public meeting today, I believe, to move forward on consolidation.
Well, thank you. That was very helpful for answers to that question. Thank you.
Good. So, other questions or comments? Then I think this committee should entertain a motion to adopt the funding proposal? Are there
I
anyone with
move, oh, sorry.
Ms. Piedmont Smith?
I think Mr. Oldham had something else to say.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Oh, I was just going to move adoption of the funding proposal brought forward by the county council for the QSPs.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this motion? Is there public comment?
For any, while
We have a very silent chat.
yes, if any member of the public wants to make a comment, just type into chat to indicate that you'd like to speak, and I will unmute you. And you can also use the raise hand function. And while we wait for any members of the public, I don't know if Committee Member Scambalori had a question or comment.
No, go ahead, Ms. Public Comment.
I have a point of order I'd like to ask.
Yes.
Thank you. If we want to entertain, Councilmember Piedmont Smith made a motion to approve it. What if I wanted to make a motion to zero out the QSP percent?
Just vote no.
Just vote no.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Other questions or comments?
Or one could move to amend that number. The vote no is not the only in order response. One could, if one wanted, amend it to some other number.
And I've not received any requests for public comment.
I've seen that. Okay, Ms. Scambalori, you raise your hand.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the comments that you've all made, and Jeff McKim, I especially appreciate your comments. I hope you run for our state house someday. You could change all the laws that are difficult.
Nope.
And I want to harken back to something Cheryl said earlier, and you mentioned a concern about revenue in 2021. Right there with you. You know, the city has that concern as well too. So if I seem cautious or if I seem hesitant to make capital improvements outside city limits, that's in part what it's about. So I would just offer that thought. And just to summarize, the motion we have on the table right now is to approve the 568,856. And another option would be to zero out the township, as Ron suggested. Is that correct? But we only have one motion on the table right now.
We only have one motion on the table.
And it's 353,700.
700.
Oh, wrong buck. Sorry. You're right.
Yes.
And just to clarify, I assume the motion would not just be for this amount, but also for the purposes that were read off by Committee Member McKim earlier in the meeting that are reflected here in the sheet.
Yes, we did approve the dispatch
Correct.
as well. Okay. Other questions or comment? Ms. Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I wanted to just explain why I'm going to vote no on this motion. This is my fourth year as a member of this committee, and we have, my thinking has kind of evolved on the funding for the qualified service providers who are outside city limits. We did, the first year we did provide some funding. The second year we did not, because the QSPs were receiving funds through Central Dispatch for the communications project, which was actually a 2-year project. And then last year we did provide some funding for the breathing apparatus, which is essential really to the safety of our firefighters. this year and in the era of COVID-19, where we are looking at reduced revenues for city government and all levels of government in the coming few years, I am becoming very focused on the city's needs because I am a representative for the city of Bloomington. And I was not really moved by the urgency or by the urgency of the requests. I felt like, I mean, they, in a way, they are very important. We don't want our firefighters getting cancer. I don't. I see the importance of that. But as far as the urgency, it doesn't rise to the level of the self-controlled breathing apparatuses of last year. So I also I feel like the consolidation of the township fire departments into the Monroe Fire Protection District are an opportunity for residents of the townships to pay their own way as far as fire protection. And their entry into the fire protection district is an opportunity for the taxes to go up so that the people who are benefiting from the services are the ones that pay for the services. So I agree with Mr. McKim, and I appreciate you saying that it's the structure of this tax is really problematic. But looking at the amounts, especially if we have to estimate 90% of last year's revenue, I just cannot, in good conscience, support the QSPs out of the total revenue stream from PS Lit. I encourage the county to consider support from their funds. That would make more sense to me. And of course, I encourage the townships and the fire protection district to look at cumulative capital funds and operation funds and increasing tax levies to meet their needs that way. Thank you.
All right, other questions or comments? Ms. Gambaluri?
Just a question for my colleagues at the county. First of all, thank you for reviewing these proposals. When you did that, was there any consideration given to focusing strictly on safety issues? So looking at an exhaust system, for example, but not looking at renovation for 2 fire stations, or was your process different than that?
We took into account, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, Cheryl.
I think of remodeling, which was proposed by 2 departments, is a very valid public safety expense because the vehicles must be kept properly sheltered so that they can be started and out the door in just a minute. And as public safety staffing changes when townships are brought into the district, this requires different vehicles than they're used to having, as well as different personnel. So, Mr. McKim?
I was going to say, we also took into account the priorities that the fire departments put themselves on their requests, and we did zero out a remodeling request as well. So it wasn't like we considered remodeling requests automatically to be the top priority. We balanced out, I think, safety and the priorities of the departments in our recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Other questions or comments? And have you seen anybody in public wishing to make public comment by raising their hand or by submitting a chat?
I've not seen any requests for public comment. I know we've had a few new folks join the meeting, so if anybody does want to make a public comment on this motion, you can type into chat or use the raise hand function to indicate that you'd like to speak.
So have we waited long enough?
I do see, I don't know, Mr. Dillard, I don't know if you are asking to comment or if you're telling me you've got to leave already, but if you'd like to make a comment, I just unmuted you and you should be ready to speak.
No, hello all. I was just chiming in late and I wanted to apologize. I had a conflicting meeting and am unable to comment. So sorry I got here late.
Okay, thank you. So council, let's restate the motion. Mr. Lucas, can you restate the motion, please? And we will then move to a roll call vote.
I believe the motion was to approve the recommended amount for funding for qualified service providers as, if you'll give me just a moment.
We keep changing this.
The motion was to approve both the amounts recommended by the county council and the purposes for that funding to be awarded to the qualified service providers. So the amount was $353,700 to be divided up as displayed on the sheet. And I repeat the uses of that funding, but this sheet can accompany the record should the motion pass.
Thank you. Thank you. Let us have a roll call vote then.
So if everybody's unmuted, I will start with committee member Oldham.
No.
Munson,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
No.
Sims,
No.
Scamboluri,
Oh.
and McKim
Yes.
and Smith.
No.
And that's 2-5.
Thank you. So council representatives, we should then consider a motion. Yes, Mr. Oldham?
If you're ready to consider a motion, I would move that we
Yes.
zero out the QSP requests, fund central dispatch, and divide the rest as according to state law.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on Mr. Oldham's motion?
I guess I'm not sure why we even need that motion. I mean, what we're required to do is consider the QSP allocation. We've already voted on the PSAP. We're required to vote on the or to consider QSP's requests, and so far we're not going to consider any QSPs or not fund any QSP requests. And so I guess I'm not sure. And then of course the rest of the distribution is according to state law anyway. So I'm not quite sure what this accomplishes.
I think
you have to make it cleaner in the long run and finalize what we were doing.
I don't know if Jeff Underwood has any thoughts on the motion. I think the same question came up in the past, and exactly what committee member Oldham just stated. It's just to clarify that the committee's recommendation is to fund PSAP at the approved budget that the committee looked at earlier in the meeting, and then adopt the rest of the sheet that was displayed. And Mr. Underwood, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I would just echo what Mr. Oldham said, that it clarifies to the fiscal bodies of the units that receive the funds what the clear recommendation is.
And I've now displayed the worksheet with, again, the 90% revenue amount suggested by the DLGF, the approved, the amount of the dispatch budget that the committee voted to approve. And then the rates will as committee member McKim stated, will be adjusted automatically based on the state formula. But I think a motion in this regard is appropriate.
So we do have a motion and a second. Other discussion by the committee members? Seeing none, let me ask for public comment, please. And again, raise your hand with the hand signal or send a message in chat. I see no public comment. Let's bring this back to the committee. If no further questions or comments, and I see none, let's have a roll call vote.
We'll start with committee member Munson.
No.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Scamboluri.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Oldham.
Yes.
And McKim.
No.
The
5-2.
The motion passes. So thank you, everybody. We are definitely in our particular quadrants that we operate in. And this is something I think the legislature will be looking at in terms of funding decisions. Okay, we have minutes to consider on our agenda. And I think we've covered everything prior to that. You agree, Mr. Lucas?
I agree. And the motion for minutes is not to approve any minutes that are prepared for today. It's to authorize the committee chair to approve the minutes of the deliberations of this year. So once those are prepared, the committee has used a similar procedure in past years where those minutes are distributed to committee members to allow for review and comment. And then the committee chair is authorized to approve those minutes after the committees have had a chance to review those. So I would assume sometime before in the next month or two, those minutes may be ready, and we'll distribute those to the committee members for review. And that way we don't have to wait until next year's process to get those to the public. So a motion to authorize the chair to approve minutes after a period of review by the committee would be appropriate.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in like that. All in favor? Mr. Lucas, it's on Zoom. You have to do a roll call. I'm sorry.
Committee member Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Scamboluri.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Oldham.
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
And McKim.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Okay.
just one other item of housekeeping. The committee had scheduled a Thursday meeting this week. Doesn't look like that meeting will be necessary. So I don't know that we need a motion to cancel, but if the committee wanted to move to cancel, it might be a little cleaner and let the public know that that meeting won't take place.
Good.
We've already got a notice out for that, correct?
Yes.
We have noticed it.
I'd like to move that we cancel Thursday's meeting, having completed our business today.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Lucas?
Committee member Sims.
Yes.
McKim.
Yes.
Scamboluri.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Oldham.
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
and Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that takes care of our housekeeping. And now to you committee members, is there any other business or final comments you wish to bring up? Mr. Smith?
I just wanted to say thanks to the county group that reviewed the applications and spent time doing that. And to thank everybody on the Zoom call today for all the great discussion. I think it's a complicated process, and I think moving forward, this is a really good step forward. So I appreciate everybody's intelligent comments and thoughtful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, I add my thanks to Ron's for the work of the County Council Committee and the people participating today. I also want to thank our emergency service providers at all levels in all departments of Monroe County. And I hope that our vote to not recommend funding to the QSPs does not mean we don't very much respect what all service providers do for our greater community. And just thank you for continuing to provide that emergency service that is so essential in time of need. And remember that it's not free and we all have to pay for those services. And we sure appreciate somebody coming when we dial 911. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or business? Well, I see none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Thank you especially to Mr. Lucas. This was his first time shepherding this, and he did a great job. Thank you also to Katz and to City of Bloomington IT for setting up our Zoom meeting. We are adjourned.